He goes, well, let me explain to you how it goes. Trump was too smart, too insulated, and had nothing to do with the mob. The mob could not touch him. And the mob ran construction industry, but not Trump. The worse the economy did, the better the mob did. When Jimmy Carter was the president, my father got rich. It was just like Joe Biden. There was something mentally wrong with them. So we lived on 88th Street. I'm telling you that the people that bought that house off my mother don't know that that drop is there. Like if I walked in that house today and rang their bell and said, I want to show you something, I used to live here, I would take them down my basement and show them where it was. They would be in shock. The rule is when a mob guy dies, whatever he has that's illegal, my brother's friend got murdered by the Colombo family. I know you're gonna wanna hurt somebody or get even for me, but if I ever get left in the street or disappear, just keep your mouth shut and just forget about it. Friday night was girlfriend night and Saturday night was wife night. So if you ever saw a picture of wise guys in a club with their wives, you could bet your life that it was a Saturday night.
Dan Vavra is asking if Anthony Ruggiano Jr.
Yes.
Part 2.
Part 2.
First of all, weapons, right? People see it in the movies, they have the revolvers, right? I'm sure that those were considered the favorites.
I mean, the majority of the weapons that my father purchased or anybody purchased was, they had guys that used to go down south and bring them up.
South means?
Down south, like the southern states, because, the gun laws were lax down south, there was gun smugglers. They would go down south and they would smuggle them up north and, sell them to mob guys. If there was ever a gun in my house, my father would keep it in his bedroom and we weren't allowed in the bedroom when there was a weapon. And if there was trouble in the street, my father actually did bring a weapon home. Mm-hmm. We weren't allowed in the bedroom, but I found that out later on, like why we weren't allowed in the bedroom. But most of the guns that I know of that were purchased were from smugglers. Mm-hmm. They were bringing them in from down south.
What is like the favorite type of getting rid of it? Like dump it to the ocean or like?
Yeah, the ocean, the sewers, down a drain, down the sewer.
There must be so many guns.
There's a lot in New York. There's a lot of ways to get rid of a lot of things. There's water. There's sewers all over the place. You throw them in the sewer. Uh-huh. I mean,
So you never use the same gun twice, pretty much.
No, not when you did something like that. My father always had a theory, like we never carried guns unless we were going to use them. Like we never went out of the house with guns. Like there were people that I know that always had a gun on them. Like there's a friend of mine named Ronnie One Arm. He's a captain in the Gambino family. He's doing life in prison right now. So he had one arm and he always had a gun on him. And that literally saved his life a few times, because he did have a gun on him. But other than that, not many people carried guns unless, there was something coming off, there was problems, trouble,
How come he had one arm?
When he was a kid, he got hit by a car in his arm and he never went for therapy and his arm never developed. It was like a short arm.
Okay.
Yeah, but he was a dangerous guy.
That's pretty significant disadvantage to have.
But he always had a gun on and he hit hard with that one hand. He was a good guy. He's unfortunately doing life now in prison, but he always had a gun on him.
How about the stashes? Like, was it a thing that you guys have like some hideouts where you could like just stash some money, guns or something in their houses?
So that's a good question. So they used to call them drops. There was a couple of carpenters, so that worked exclusively for the mob. Job where if you fucked up, you got killed. So what they would do is, they would come in your house and they would look around and they would build a drop. So what a drop is, they would build something in your house that only them and you knew where it was, and you would hide your money in there or guns in there or whatever you wanted to put in there in the drop. So if the house gets raided or gets robbed, you couldn't tell like where it was hidden. When I first started working in crap games, they used to do the crap games. They used to build a drop where the crap game was so we could hide the money. So if the crap game got raided, the cops never found the money. When I got arrested, it's funny because when I got arrested in Mulberry Street for the numbers, right? So we had chairs like this and a couch. And in the middle, we had a footrest where you put your foot on. And the guy that made the drops for us, right? He took the top off of the pillar, and it was hollow. and we would put the number and so on. But you turn it over, and the legs had like plastic things, and you would turn them, and they had long screws, and then you would take the screws out, and then the top came off and put it in, and we put all the numbers in there, and then it would look like a footstool and leave it in the living room. And when they raided the apartment, they didn't find what they were looking for the work of that day, which they couldn't find because it was in the drop. So these guys literally actually made a living doing that. Like they got paid to do that. They made a living, and they and they were trustworthy because if they would have gave up the drop, they could have lost their lives. The mob had guys that built hideouts. Put them.
Wow.
There's one in my house on 88th Street. So we lived on 88th Street. I'm telling you that the people that bought that house off my mother don't know that drop is there. Like if I walked in that house today and rang their bell and said, I want to show you something, I used to live here, I would take them down my basement and show them where it was. They would be in shock.
What?
Yeah.
So there must be still a lot of stuff pretty much stored
that people
without
died,
without even the actual owners knowing about it, because the only guy who knew it can be dead.
And a lot of people that had a lot of money did send it overseas. I mean, my father used to tell me that Gambino used to send his money to Switzerland, and so there was,
Yeah, because back at your time it was all cash operated, and you can only have as much on you.
Yeah.
So
we used to sell money. We used to sell the money. So we would get dollars and fives and tens, and you get 20, 30, 40,000 in dollars and fives. It's it's a lot of money. What are you going to do with it? We used to sell it to this guy for hundreds. For like 2%, 3%, we would sell him the singles and fives and tens, and he would give us back hundreds.
Well, I was just about to ask you, like, how much money ever you saw, like, the most? What was, like, the maximum?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars I saw. My son, he worked in a casino. It's just a funny story. And the first time he went in the money room, he saw $1 million block. And he called me up. He was having a panic attack. He goes, I just saw $1 million block of money. They have the casinos block it, the million. And it's like he was flipping out. But I saw a lot of money change hands at the crap games. I mean, I saw hundreds of thousands exchange hands. And
But all in cash.
All cash.
And plus those dollars are the old dollars. It's still pretty much, it says on them like backed up by gold and all that stuff. It was all the time when it was still worth it.
Yeah, all dollars. And everybody, was made. Even the sanitation department got arrested for money. The sanitation department, so years ago, one of them lived in my neighborhood. So they used to burn the money, the old money. The Treasury Department would give the money to the New York City Sanitation Department, and they would bring it to the dump, and they were supposed to burn it. There was 5 guys that did it. They were like senior sanitation workers, robbing some of it. They weren't burning it all. Yeah. So but that was it. We had drops, and we had a crew of guys, carpenters, that worked solely for the 5 families that built the drops for all the families in our homes, in our games. That was what they did.
That's pretty significant role to have, because you are responsible for a lot of money, and people get killed for a lot less.
And they're the only ones that know where it is.
Yes. Yeah. Well, how about cars? You said like John Gotti told you to go to certain place and pick up a car because he had a name and stuff. But what about the other guys? Like, could you potentially steal a car from the street and then use it?
We didn't use them. We sold them. We chopped them. We had a big stolen car ring with my cousin Frankie. We used to call him Frankie the Mechanic. That was his nickname because he was a car thief. He was a car mechanic when he was a kid that became a car thief. So that was his nickname, Frankie the Mechanic. And we had a stolen car ring, and we had chop shops. So we would steal the cars at night, and then we'd bring them to the chop shops, which were garages, and we used to take the cars apart and sell the parts to the junkyards. Now, Paul Castellano got indicted for cars. They had a stolen car ring with Nino Gaggi and Roy DeMeo. They were sending cars overseas, which was big money. That was big money. I was on a much smaller level than that. We were stealing. Well, we used to steal sometimes 10 cars a night, and we would chop them up. We would get orders. It was mostly American-made cars back then, not like today. Everything's foreign. And we would chop them up and sell the front ends, and and then get rid of the chassis. Then they'll go. I actually got arrested for that. We were chopping cars, and we were dumping the chassis off behind Kennedy Airport. And the sanitation detectives, because the sanitation has their own police force that patrols the swamps and make sure nobody's dumping stuff. And they actually rolled in on us and they arrested me. I was always lucky that way, and I got arrested for like 15 stolen cars. Paid a fine. I paid like a $5,000 fine.
So how many guys you need in order to steal 10 cars a night?
Frankie started the car, just 2-3 guys. We would drive them back and then go back out. Drive them back and go back out.
So one by
Frankie would start them. He had a tool, and he would get in the car, and he would tool the ignition out, start the car up in the blink of an eye, and then somebody would just get in it and drive it back to the drop-off spot, and we'd drop it off and then go back out again.
Well, the cars had no security, no alarms back then.
And we used to go in this neighborhood where there's all apartment buildings, so there's a lot of cars. We didn't go in residential. Yeah. I mean, it was a residential area, but it wasn't homes. It was all apartment buildings, condos, all big apartment complexes, all up on Queens Boulevard, where there's hundreds of cars and just big buildings, and there's no homes.
You see like how much the world actually changed from there just because of the lack of the cameras, because now we have cameras everywhere. When I listen Sammy when he talk about the Louis de Bono hit, what they did in the World Trade Center, it's crazy that you can get a hit on someone in a garage of World Trade Center.
Yeah, no more.
Right? Like, I mean, that's ridiculous. You go anywhere, you leave your house, you see cameras everywhere. So now stealing a car, especially with all those alarms and system and tracking, that's nearly impossible and definitely not worth the trouble. So when it comes to the organization itself, is there a situation when the guy would be just, let's say, a made guy, but he caused so much trouble, he's still in the jail, doesn't make any money, you guys cannot kick him out, right? You cannot undo someone from the membership, right?
What they call that, they put you on the shelf. That's what they call. So if you're a made member and you do something wrong that doesn't require you getting killed, they call it, what they do is they put you on the shelf, and you're not recognized anymore. Like you lose your power. So you're just, you're not recognized. You can't sit down no more. And they put you on the shelf. Sometimes they'll take you off the shelf and give you back your power, or sometimes they'll leave you on like certain things you don't deserve to die for, so they put you on the shelf. Guys like my father and John Gotti and all them, they would have never been able to put on the show. They would have never stood for it, so they probably would have got killed if they got in trouble like that. But now they just put you on, they call it putting you on the shelf. Mm-hmm. So they just chase you,
Besides that Queen's Club and the River Night, were there other places that belonged to Gambinos at the time?
Oh yeah, Charlie West had a club around on March. Everybody, I mean, there were so many clubs. My father had clubs in Brooklyn where other guys hung out there with him. We had Cafe Liberty. Yeah, there was a lot of Gambino. Every family had a lot of clubs in a lot of neighborhoods. I mean, there was clubs all over the place, social clubs all over the place. Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, everywhere.
I remember you said that when you start to work with your father, he was, for your own safety, he was introducing you to other guys, he was talking like, who is this guy, whatever. But isn't it like breaking the code, like explaining to someone from the outside world, even when you are his son, who is who?
Well, I wasn't from the outside world. I was his son.
I know, but still not a made guy.
Yeah, but I was still with him.
Okay, so even like the associate knows who is who.
Right. You have to know who's who, because you don't want to disrespect somebody. You don't want to get it. If I don't know you're a wise guy and I smack you in the face, you know what I mean? You got to know. So if you're in the street, if I'm with you and I'm in the street and I'm out there every day, I need to know who's who, because I need to know what's going on so I don't get myself in trouble.
But you just don't do it openly, like going and saying like, oh, this is this guy, because you should really keep it quiet.
Yeah. Like my father would tell me, even guys he killed people with, he would tell me I did a piece of work with that guy. That means him and the guy committed a murder. Or he would tell me that guy did a lot of work. I know that guy. My father had two phrases. If my father told me that guy did work, that means the guy killed somebody. If my father told me he was a good kid or a good guy, that means he killed somebody. Because my father considered, if you could kill somebody, you're a good guy. That's how they thought. Like, you killing somebody made you a good guy. And the more people you killed,
better guy you are.
He's a really good guy. That kid is a good kid.
Well, when we talk about it, like, first name that comes to my head is Roy DeMeo, right? Serial killer. We can say it that way because, they kill people like even who were innocent. Have you had any dealings with him?
I never dealt with him, but I knew him. I met him many times. He used to come to the Raven Night. I met him a couple of times at the Gemini Lounge because my father and Tony Lee would go there to see him because they did business with him. They were in the same family. I never personally did any business with him, but I knew him. I mean, You know, we knew each other well enough to say hello to each other. He knew who I was. I knew who he was. But
would you say that at his prime he did the most of the work for the Gambino family?
no, I mean he did a lot of work for Paul Castellano, but he was a sick person. You know, he wasn't. He was a sick guy. You know, and then he wound up getting killed anyway. I mean, they were chopping people up, and they did vicious, crazy things, nasty stuff.
Nasty stuff. Well, when I watched the Goodfellas again yesterday, kind of like refreshed the mind.
Yeah.
What is the story with Jimmy Two Times? Is this based on something
You
real?
know, I didn't know a guy named Jimmy Two Times. You know, not everything in that movie is real.
Of course.
That movie was really done well. I mean, it was really probably one of the best mob movies, you know, as far as realistic goes. But Henry had nothing to do with Lufthansa. He had nothing, which in the movie he did. That's all bullshit. He had nothing to do with Lufthansa. I never met a Jimmy Two Time. I mean, I met everybody in that movie, but I don't remember him. You know, I don't. That says
Just a funny character, like
yeah, probably just a Hollywood character. I mean, I'm sure maybe there was a guy named Jimmy, but everybody else I knew. Everybody else I knew.
I mean, there is so many different scenes when you see the mob wives or girlfriends hanging out together. Is that a false or is it a truth that the women also hang out together?
Well, the wives did. I mean,
wives.
so the mob, everybody had girlfriends, comadres, and it was funny because you took your girlfriend out on a Friday night, and then you took your wife out on a Saturday night, and this was done all the time, like
in the same club.
Sometimes in the same club, which wasn't too bright, but especially like the Copacabana. Friday night was girlfriend night, and Saturday night was wife night. So if you ever saw a picture of wise guys in a club with their wives, you could bet your life that it was a Saturday night. Yeah.
This is so interesting. And the wives, they knew, right? I mean,
they knew, they didn't know, they were in denial. I mean, you know, they knew. My father always had girlfriends, you know.
I mean, the dating for us right now, it's completely different than back then, right?
Oh, of course.
Now, like, at least you can approach a girl and tell her, like, hey, what's your number? Back then, okay, what's your number? What it means, right? Like, they had no cell phone. So you had to call their house.
Yeah,
what
I
if
mean,
the mother
a
picks up?
lot of girls gravitated towards mob guys. I mean, a lot of girls we dated knew we had wives. I mean, you know, the girlfriends that we had knew we were married. They didn't give a shit. You know, I mean, they got treated like queens. Why? You know, they got treated great. They weren't looking to get married. You know, they went to the best clubs. You know, they wore the best clothes. They ate good. They were so Fat Andy's girlfriend, Tony Lee's girlfriend. You know, they loved it. You know, the wives didn't know and the kids didn't know, but the girlfriends all knew. Who had apartments, who paid their rent. My father bought a woman a house. I had a fight with him. Wow. I mean, it's insane. My father went to jail, and his girlfriend called my mother up and said, come to Valley Stream, I want to show you the house your husband bought me. I was in jail at the time. I mean, that's just how fucking nuts that life was.
So did you guys have any deals like with like a porn industry, like making the movies or financing it or something?
DB, who died, he was a distributor. He was one of the biggest porn distributors in the country. So you couldn't, so all the porn that was being made at one time in the United States, you couldn't get it distributed unless he was almost like the sole distributor of porn.
How did regular people look at it? Like what porn meant back then for them? Because now it's a normal thing.
Well, it was on 8mm film. You used to buy a 8mm roll and you play it on in a projector or magazines. Then the VCR came out, and then you would go in the video store and they would have a section, adult section. You would go in there and they would have porn movies on the VCR, and then DB, unfortunately, he missed the internet. If he was around now with the internet, he would be a billion. He might have been like the next Jeff Bezos. I mean, he would have been, you know, he would have probably been a billionaire. Now with the internet, I mean, he was a multimillionaire then, and there was no internet. You know, everything was distributed, you know, to theaters and on 8mm film and magazines. But he was one of the biggest.
Well, the main reason why he got the hit was because he lent the money to Angela Kwakwa.
Yeah, right, $100,000. That's the story Sammy tells. I mean, I believe it. And you know, I believe in it. And plus, he had a lot of power. He was like one of Paul Castellano's main guys. He was not a gangster. He was a businessman. I mean, he was a good guy. I got along great with him. He was very friendly with Tony Lee and my father. I mean, I used to tease him all the time about bringing me to the studio because the studios were in New Jersey. And he used to tell me, "I'm going to bring you." When are you going to bring me? And he never brought me. So that was. Yeah, he owed Angelo $100,000, and John gave Sammy the order to kill him, and Sammy and his crew killed him, and they were all good friends.
Yeah, that's one of those like situations when the
and when I went to see Sammy in Arizona, he explained to me the whole situation, and it was bloody.
Makes sense, kind of
bloody.
Yeah. How about the Angelo Quack Quack? You got some stuff going on with him. He was a part of like you guys, right?
Yeah, he was in the game. His brother was one of the biggest heroin dealers around, Sal Quack Quack. He was a good friend of mine. He was good. Angelo was a killer. He was dangerous. He was a killer for Neil. I mean, and then when Sally died, Angelo took over the heroin business.
Even on YouTube, you can play that famous wiretap when he is standing by Neil's death.
Yeah, I'm not giving up the tapes because there's friends of mine on the tapes. I'm not giving them up. There's fucking friends. Yeah, because people would have got killed.
I'm going to tell you something. If you two never bother with me again in the rest of my life, I ain't giving them tapes up. I can't. There's good friends of mine on them fucking tapes. Well, he's divorced. You have to do what he tells you.
That's why I said to you before, you don't understand what it is. It also means that the boss is your boss. Understand?
Who knows who was on those tapes? Other wise guys that was selling junk that nobody knew about. They would have all got killed. There would have been a death sentence. That's why he wasn't giving up the tapes. Yeah. He was a gangster, Angelo. No doubt about it. He was my father's informant. So my father in 80 went to Florida, and he was going back and forth. But every time he came up to New York, we would go to Richie Gotti. John Gotti's brother had a club around the corner from the Burger Nut and Fish Club, and we would go to the club. And my father would just ask Angelo a question, and he would just tell him everything. So anything my father wanted to know what was going on, just Angelo loved him, and Angelo would tell him everything. He was my father's mob informant.
That's like the guy who can ruin everything if he says one wrong sentence.
Yeah.
And when they on that wiretap, you can hear Neil saying that you cannot kill a boss. Boss is the boss. Is the boss.
Well, but they waited for Neil to die.
Yeah, and then
that was it. That would have been. People ask me what would have happened if Neil wasn't sick.
Yes.
I don't know. That's a good question. That's a tough question. Would Neil have killed John? There's a possibility he might have. Neil was an old timer, a stickler for the rules. But and then on the other hand, Neil was taking money. Neil was getting money off them too. Neil made out he didn't know. My father and Tony used to talk about that all the time. Neil was getting a lot of money from a lot of heroin dealers. Like Eddie Leno was a heroin dealer. A lot of guys were bringing him money and diamond rings and everything, and they were junk dealers. So he made out he didn't know, but he had to know where this money was coming from.
Of course.
So
especially if it's a lot of money, then it's probably drugs, right?
Who knows what would have happened if Neil didn't have cancer?
Mm-hmm.
Would John have got killed? Who knows?
Yeah. It all came in the right time, kind of. Look, if you look at it,
it was like the perfect storm.
Yeah, right. So I kind of understand that they wanted to hey, okay, let's do this and let's start all over fresh, but that start didn't really happen right, I would say, because all the attention went to this direction.
Yeah.
But was it kind of a miracle that actually no serious war happened in the Gambino family right after that hit?
Well, you got to understand too. Don't forget, John had all the shooters: Frankie Leno, Sammy the Bull, Frankie DeChico, his brother Jeannie, Angelo. They were the killers. Willie Boy. After Paul Castellano was killed, now Sammy the Bull told me the story. They had a meeting with all captains, and Frankie DeChico nominated John to be the boss, and Sammy and all of them were in the room. So all the captains knew
who did
what happened, and all the captains knew that if they didn't vote for this guy, they might be next. So pretty much everybody fell in line, and they voted. And then Frankie DeChico nominated John to be the boss, and all the captains voted, and John became the boss.
What happened with all that money that Paul had and all that property, that White House that he had? What happened with that? Does it stay with the family, or someone actually got it?
So the rule is, when a mob guy dies, whatever he has that's illegal goes to the family. Whatever he has that's legal goes to his immediate family. So when Paul died, all his legitimate stuff went to his kids, went to his sons, like Western Beef. But the mob still had a piece of it. But that's the rules. When a mob guy dies, So let's just say a soldier dies. Okay, we'll start at the bottom. So a soldier dies. All the stuff that he has that's illegal goes to his captain. Now, if his captain wants to give it, to the family, he could. Anything he has legit, the immediate family is supposed to keep it.
Okay.
So
interesting, because those are the things you don't really find out online, because you see all those properties and they were estimating how
all
much
that
he
goes
made.
all that goes to the immediate family. Any kind of legitimate businesses or homes or whatever goes to the family.
Got it. I feel like that someone like Paul nowadays would be considered a billionaire, probably, because if you are making,
but he was rich they were millionaires. They were millionaires from when money was money, from the 40s and 50s. That mean, forever they had so much money, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars.
You said that in order, especially back then, to become a made member, you have to clip someone. So you said that Paul was a businessman, but he was a captain. So how he became?
Well, because first of all, he was dangerous. Second of all, he was Carlo Gambino's cousin. They were all Sicilian. You know what I mean? And he got straightened out. He was probably straightened out. He might have got straightened out. That's a good question. I don't even know when he got straightened out. He might have got straightened out when the books got opened in 55. He could have got straightened out. When he might have got straightened out after, he probably did get straightened out after Carl became the boss. My father probably got straightened out before him. Don't forget, they were all first cousins. They intermarried each other. The Gambinos and the Castellanos intermarried. First cousins married first cousins. I mean, he was the boss because, don't forget, Gambino nominated him. So everybody had respect for Gambino, like Neil, and he became the boss.
Can you be a captain and never do any hit on someone?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
So that kind of explains the whole
what happened was, so when my father got straightened out back then in the early 30s and 40s and 50s, you had to do a piece of work. When the books opened in 55, that sort of changed. If you were a big earner, if you were a big earner,
or you had connections,
right, or you were a relative, like Charlie Wagons. I'll give you for instance, like Charlie Wagons. He straightened out my father, who did a piece of work. He straightened out John Gotti, who did a piece of work. Angelo, who did work. Jeannie Gotti, who did work. Johnny Caniglia, who did work. Now you got 5 guys that he proposed throughout the years that all did work for the family, which I mean they did hits for the Gambino family. Charlie would blatantly say to people, all my guys got it the right way.
They've proved themselves.
Right. All my guys got it the right way. And I heard him say that myself. More than once. That was his claim. Like when guys started talking about guys getting straightened out, he would say, yeah, he got straightened out, but remember one thing, my guys got it the right way by killing somebody.
So they still had different categories even for the made man. Yeah, you are a made man, but...
Yeah, but my guys got it the right way.
No, those are the
You got it
grudges.
because you make money. Like, my guys got it the right way.
Or you are the relative of someone.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting that it always stays there a little bit, even if it should not be there, because you're all even, right? You are all made guys.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I would like to go right now through some basic names that people are maybe not familiar with, even when the names probably were very big in the mob, So first of all, like Joe Watts. Have you ever had like any interactions with
Joe
him?
Watts? I knew Joe Watts very well. He was German. Joe Watts was a killer. He was one of John Gotti's main guys. Joe Watts was not Italian, was never made, but Joe Watts had permission to sit with captains. Joe Watts was John Gotti made everybody treat Joe Watts like a captain, which drove Tony Lee, my father's partner, totally crazy.
Why?
Because Tony Lee was an old school guy. And Joe Watts killed made guys for John. And Tony didn't like the fact that Joe Watts was allowed to kill made guys. Tony believed that a made guy, if he deserved to die out of respect, he should die from another made guy's hands. And he did not like the fact that Joe Watts killed Joe Butch's cousin, Augie. Joe Butch was a captain in the Gambino family, and Augie was a wise guy, and they killed him, and Joe Watts was the shooter. And my father and Tony were very, very close to Joe Watts' cousin, and they did not like the idea that Joe Watts was allowed to do that. They felt he should have been killed by another made member out of respect. I mean, it sounds crazy. You're talking about a murder, but that's what they believed. That was their...
Those are the rules.
And but Joe Watts was he was a sport. He was a great dresser, partier,
So pretty much the only reason why he wasn't made was because
he was
German.
if he was Italian, he would have been made in a heartbeat. My father always told me that if anything happened to him, just forget about it. He would tell me that if they ever left me in the street or I disappeared, forget about it. He used to tell me, because you can't fight an army. Mm-hmm. So I know you're going to want to hurt somebody or get even for me, but if I ever get left in the street or disappear, just keep your mouth shut and just forget about it. And it proved out, because there was a captain with the Genovese family called Patty Mack. He got murdered, and he had a son my age. And his son was going around, I'm going to get even, I'm going to get even, I'm going to get even. And one night, about a month later, he was in a bar in Queens by St. John's Cemetery, and two guys walked in the bar and they shot him in the head. That's the mob. Guys like Sammy and John and my old man and Tony Lee and Jeannie and all of them guys, they checked all the boxes. They were killers, earners, tough guys, smart. I mean, they had no formal education, but they were intelligent. You needed some kind of brain to organize what they organized. You needed some kind of brain to run crews like they ran crews. My father had 80 guys with him at one time. You got to have some kind of brains to do something like that. Yeah, you're running it on fear and respect, but you have to have some kind of intelligence. So guys like Sammy, he checked all the boxes. He was a killer. He was an earner. He was a stand-up guy. So and when you did work, you were elevated, right? You were you were elevated right in. Mm-hmm. You were definitely getting straightened out. If you were on record with a wise guy and you did a piece of work, you were guaranteed getting straightened out. There's no doubt about it. You were made.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, because this act pretty much made you, right?
Right. Yeah.
So when you have those 5 families, which of them was the most powerful at the time?
Well, when I first got into it was the Gambino family. Later on, I would say the Genovese family. Now, from what I understand now, it's the Genovese family. They're probably the most structured, the most secretive. I mean, they're really secretive, like they're crazy secretive. Chin was not crazy. I know his daughter Rita very well. I hung out with Rita. She's a good friend of mine. That was all an act. Yeah. And it was amazing because she said he would be up in the house with them, normal, and then she said he was like an actor, and he would have to go out, and she would go out with him when she was a kid, and he would put on a robe and a hat, and as he was walking down the stairs, he would get all like into character. Uh-huh. And what the craziest part of the whole thing was, people don't even realize, I know because I'm in the treatment center business. Okay, I work in a detox, and we give people psychotic medication. And psychotic medication is serious medication. This guy checked himself into psych wards and took psychotic medication, not being psychotic. That's crazy within itself. Just that act alone is fucking nuts. To go be a normal person, go into a psych ward and take psychotic medication. Mm-hmm. That alone makes you nuts.
That was another guy I was about to ask, because I mean, all the bosses and all the influential people in that life knew, right?
Yeah.
That he's not nuts. That
of course they know. Everybody knew he wasn't nuts.
So how come he was able to play it for 20 years?
Because the lawyers, the judges, he just, it worked.
Crazy.
It worked until Sammy gave it all up. It worked until it didn't work.
Crazy.
I mean, his brother was a priest. His brother was advocating for him. You know what I mean? It worked until it didn't work, until Sammy cooperated, and then now guy had a townhouse uptown where his girlfriend lived. He had 2 families.
Well, how did you guys manage security? If someone like Chin is going on the street and pretending to be crazy, are there still some guys around him to making sure no one who is driving by is gonna blast a shot to him or something?
No, nobody's gonna do that. It's not like that's only in troubled times. Nobody's gonna do that. Take a random shot at a guy like that, because people know what's gonna happen. You can't just randomly shoot at a guy like Chin.
But it happened. Like there were hits on the bosses on the street.
Yeah, but those are planned hits. Those are, behind closed door hits. You know what I mean?
It just seems like, when I even saw the footage of John Gotti getting out of the car and walking on the Mulberry Street, from today's point of view, if you want to get rid of the guy like that, I mean, he's walking on the street. He's not like hiding. He doesn't have a guards around him. He doesn't have a armored truck around him, or, like this type of security. It seems to me that he just walks on the street. So it's surprising that some of them made it so far, considering all the circumstances.
Well, when there was trouble, I mean, when John first became the boss, and after they blew Frankie DeChico up, he had security.
Of course.
He never went anywhere by himself. He had 2 cars with him at all times. He had guys with him at all. Bobby Burriello was with him. He had bodyguards until they once they straighten something out and you get someone's word, it's over. If I give you my word that it's over, I can't break my word. Otherwise, I'll get killed.
Okay. How many serious sit downs have you ever experienced?
Oh my God, I had so many sit downs. I have sit downs. I had one. I mean, I got wise guys threw punches at me. Tom DeSailor threw a punch at me, and Tony Roach. I mean, really? I had sit downs over money. I had sit downs over fights. I had sit downs over everything. I've been my whole life. I had a lot of sit downs, but I was involved in a lot of sit downs with other people. I would sit down with my father when he went on sit downs. But my own personal sit downs, I had many sit downs. But a lot of them, it was business, nothing bad. Some of it was bad, some of it was fights and arguments, but most of the time it was over some kind of business. It was over. I extorted a vending company. And the Genovese family put a claim in on the vending company, so I took over this vending company off this couple. Like we took it, I chased it, whatever. So I took over this vending company, gambling machines, and the Genovese family put a claim in that the guy was with him, but the guy wasn't with them. So we had a big sit down, me, Mikey Gal, Ronnie One Arm, and these wise guys with the Genovese family, and we had to sit down. And the wind up was that I had to go partners with them. But I ran the company, so the wind-up was, the agreement was we were partners, but they had no say in the company. I ran the company as I saw fit, and I just had to bring them their money once a month. So that was, I did, sit-downs like that. Sit-downs over other guys that people put claims in, like if you're a bookmaker and you're with me, but you're making a ton of money, like another family might put a claim in. Like I had another guy, Eddie D. He was a big bookmaker, and his father was with the Lucchese family. But he was my friend, and I helped him. He had after-hour clubs that I looked out for him. We were bookmaking together, him and I, and so his father died. He was a big earner, this guy, Eddie D. Now, the Lucchese family, when his father died, they put a claim in on Eddie. And we had a sit-down. Me and Mikey Gal, because Tony had died, and the Lucchese family, and we had a sit-down. And the guy is arguing that he's with him because the father was with him. And I'm arguing that's both just because the father's with you. What the fuck does that mean? Yeah. This guy, I helped this guy 100 times. He had trouble in his after hour. I helped him. I did this. I did that. If he's with you, what is he coming to me for every time he has a problem? So the ruling went my way. So when they ruled, they said, no, he's with Andy and Tony Lee. So those are the type of sit-downs I was involved in. I was involved with bookmaker sit-downs. So another time, a guy, one of my runners, back then with bookmaking, we had runners. Like, so you had, let's say, you had 10 guys that wanted to bet football. So you would come to me and I would make you a runner and I would give you a half sheet. So what a half sheet is that when they lost, you and I we split the money 50-50. When they won, you went into red for it, and then it came out of your end. So if they won $500 today, you and I got $250. If they won $500 next week, you went into red for $500. But you're responsible for the money, the runner. I don't meet your customers. I don't want to know your customers. You have to bring me the money every week, or I have to give you the money every week. So I had a runner that owed us $20,000. He comes to us and he tells us, I got stiffed. I don't have the $20,000. You just got to help me. So we tell him, listen, we don't want to know nothing. You got to bring us $20,000. And he didn't. So we hit him. We hit him in the club. We smacked him, whatever. He had an uncle that was a wise guy in New Jersey. I forget the guy's name now. His uncle contacts us. Now I sit down with him with Jeannie Gotti across the street from the Burger Nut and Fish Club. Actually, we're sitting down because they had another office across the street, and it's me, this guy, the wise guy from Jersey, I forget the guy's name. It's him, me, Jeannie Gotti, Tony Lee, because my father's partner was alive, and we're sitting down. And the guy says, who the fuck are you to put your hands on my nephew? I said, first of all, I didn't know he was your nephew. And I really didn't. I didn't know he had an uncle. I said, first of all, I didn't know he was your nephew. And second of all, he's a runner, and he owes me $20,000. So I put my hands on him. The wise guy turns around to Jeannie. He goes, I don't know nothing about this bookmaking shit. So Jeannie, who was a funny bastard, John Gotti's brother, he goes, well, let me explain to you how it goes. Your nephew was a runner that was turning in action to them. The runner is responsible for the money, so your nephew is responsible for $20,000. So now do you understand what's going on? The runner is responsible for the money. So the uncle says, well, then I guess I'm going to have to lay out the $20,000. So those are the type of sit-downs I was in. Some sit-downs I was involved in murders. They killed my brother's friend. My brother's friend got murdered by the Colombo family.
Damn.
They jacked him. Paul Castellano, we had a big sit-down in Brooklyn. That's the first time I met Paul Castellano in the summer of 1977, before I got married. We had a sit-down. The Persicos reached out to Castellano, and he sent for my father, and that was a sit-down over us trying to get even. My father had to it was a bad decision for us. So I was involved in sit-downs the whole time I was out in the street.
Very interesting, because the sit-downs are also a form of negotiating, which is not taught on any level, only based on your experience, or that's not what the school teaches you. But you guys, if you make a mistake, you are paying with serious consequences.
Sit-downs were the heart and soul of the mob. Yeah. My father's theory was, I may not be right, but I'll never be wrong. That's what he used to say before every sit-down. He used to go, I may not be right, but I'll never be wrong. That was his famous quote. Yeah.
When you talk about the Lucchese's and stuff, like next name that comes to my mind is not a name, but it's a nickname, Gaspipe.
Right.
What would you say about the guy like that? Was he really that vicious?
Yeah, he was terrible. I didn't know him well, but the stories I heard about him are horrible. He killed the poor guy that fixed his house because he didn't want to pay him. He tortured guys. They were vicious. When they took over, this guy Bruno, who was good friends with Tony Lee, he was a wise guy. He was close to Paulie Vario. Gaspipe did not get along with Gotti and all of them at all. They were all put in by this guy, Chrissy Tick. Chrissy Tick was the underboss of the Lucchese family who went to jail on the commission case. Mm-hmm. When he went to jail on the commission case, that's when Vic Amuso and Gaspipe took over the Lucchese family.
And then that's exactly the moment when the family changed completely, because I was reading something about that they have the less amount of like violence and stuff, the Lucchese's, until those two came into power, and then it just all
went nuts. I was away with Lucchese guys that said, I was away with Frankie Bones. He committed murders for them. They were killing everybody. Yeah.
Crazy.
They were killing innocent people to take over their private sanitation companies.
Okay. Now let's spend some little time on the main character of the whole story. I mean, John Gotti, right? You mentioned his brothers, Richie, Jeannie, and from all those guys around him, who was the best? Jeannie?
Out of all his brothers?
Yes.
Oh yeah, Jeannie by far. The rest of them I had no use for. Vinny, I liked Vinny. Vinny was my age. Vinny was, he was a little crazy, but Pete was, I didn't like, Pete was, I'm not, Richie was a complete idiot. His brother Richie was a total fucking moron. And he even used to say that about him. Pete was a greedy bastard, was a sanitation worker. He should have stood working in the sanitation. He was just no good. He was a punk. Yeah, Jeannie was definitely a gangster. Jeannie and John Jeannie was the cream of the crop.
Jeannie is still alive, right?
Yeah, Jeannie just did 30 years in prison.
30 years, and he did it whole?
All, every day. 30
Is that
years.
the story that John told them not to take a plea?
Yep, they could have got like 10 or 15 years, and John told them no.
Why?
And they got 50 years.
Because you would have to admit that if you take a plea, you pretty much admit, right?
Yeah, admit that he was selling heroin. And they got 50 years, and they did 30 years. They did 30 years.
Oh my God, 30 years. That's crazy. You spent 14 years in the pen, right?
I spent 14 years, yeah.
Do you know the exact days and the months and stuff and everything?
Yeah, I went away. The first time I went away was in 78. I got out in 80. And then I went away again in 91. I got out at the end of 92. And then I went away again in 2004. And I went away again in 1996. And I got out in 2004. I did a little less than 14 years.
I heard the story that before you were going to the jail first time, they made a huge party for you, right? Like
Yeah.
a birthday party, like something to celebrate.
Yeah. At the Raven Night.
Yeah.
I had going away. I put on a suit and tie. I was 23 years old. I put on a suit and a tie. My father took me to the Raven Night. I walked in. The place was packed with captains and wise guys. They had food, a big spread of food on the wall. Neil was there hugging me and kissing me. Neil, the underboss, his son Buddy, who was really a good friend of mine. Buddy, I loved Buddy. His son passed away. We would like this, me and Buddy. He was there. And, it was just, we had a big party like I was going off to college.
Like if you would graduate.
Yeah,
right?
and everybody was schooling me about what to do when I went to jail. I don't say that. Don't. If anybody says they know us, make sure you send word out to us and all this stuff. And then and then Joe Gallo sent word to his son up in Dannemora, because Dannemora was reception, so they knew I was going to go there. They knew I had to go there for reception. So when I got there, Joe Gallo's son was waiting for me, and they had a big party for me at the Raven Night. That was in 1978, March of 1978.
You were still hesitating to go in because there were still things that you wanted to take care of before you go there, like a haircut, right?
Oh no, yeah. So
looking
the day
fancy.
I turned the day I turned myself in. So after the party at the Raven Night, like 2 or 3 days later is when I actually had to turn myself in. So I went to get a haircut at this barbershop, father and son, and John Gotti and Angelo Kwok walked in and saw me there. And John says, "What the fuck are you doing here? Don't you got to surrender today?" I go, "Yeah, I'm getting a haircut." He goes, "Go ahead, go home to your wife. What are you, crazy?" He paid for my haircut, and I left, and I went home because I had to turn myself in that afternoon. Yeah. And when I went away in 96, I didn't know I was getting indicted by the feds.
Yeah.
I took a plea, and the Yankees were playing for the World Series, and I told my lawyers, make sure my surrender date isn't until after the World Series, because I wanted to see the World Series with my son, because I wanted to take him to the games. And I went and I turned myself in the day after the World Series ended.
Oh my God. So it's crazy that you can pick a day.
Yeah, like we're going on vacation. Yeah, don't listen, keep me out for the World Series, then I'll go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like at the time when John was a boss, when you look on the other families who had different bosses, would you say that the John was like the best boss out of all of them, or who was at the time the best boss? Like Cosa Nostra
Probably the
boss?
smartest boss was Gambino. The best boss when John was probably the Chin, even though he was playing crazy. They were the most secretive. They were making the most money. They were the most settled.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it was the Genovese family.
Makes sense.
John was a good boss. He was dangerous, but he was out, putting everybody on Front Street.
Mm-hmm. Your dad dealt with Sonny Francis because he had a choice to go in
Right.
Colombo or Gambino. Have you ever sit down and talk to your dad about like the fact what would actually happen, not only with him but also with you, if you guys would go with the Colombos, because they had some different reputation than
My
Gambinos,
father
right?
always told me that he goes, I made such a mistake. I should have went to Columbus. I would be because they were such a small crew. Like he would have probably made a lot more money and got advanced a lot faster. But he just liked Charlie. He liked Charlie. But him and Sonny Francis always remained great friends. I mean, they went out together. My mother was great friends with his wife. I mean, me and Michael talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Michael comes on my show. I go on Michael's show. We text each other. So we have a lot of history together. So, and the matter of fact, the last time I saw Sonny Francis, he was always in jail with my father. So every jail, federal prison my father went to, Sonny was there because he was always getting violated. My father was in Petersburg, Virginia. Sonny was there. Then he got out. My father got transferred to Allenwood. Sonny got violated. He went to Allenwood. So every jail my father was in, Sonny was there. But the last time, when I got out in 2004, I was on supervised release. And Sonny was on supervised release. And we both lived in Suffolk County in Long Island. So we had to report to the same office. So I go up to the office one day, and Sonny's in the office in the waiting room sitting there, and he sees me, and I sit and we start talking, and that's just when I'm proposed now. I'm waiting to get made, and he leans over to me and he says, now he's the underboss of the Colombo family, and he leans over to me and he says, I had a really good conversation about you the other night with Jojo. Jojo Carrazza was the consigliere of the Gambino family at the time. He goes, you're pretty much in. I go, yeah, I know, I heard. And as we're talking, the door busts open and the guy comes running out, separate.
They knew.
They saw us on the camera talking, and they came out and Sonny went, calm down. He told the guy, take it easy. And the guy's going, news can't be talking to each other. And they made me sit on the other side of the room.
Damn, what an embarrassment with such a guy, because he's like real old timer.
He's a legend.
When I look at a gangster like him, like
he was a legend.
To do such a time in a pen for
he did 50 years,
and he was framed for that, right?
Yeah,
for that bank robbery.
He never did that. My father always told me that was a frame job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was no bank robber.
What happened with the other relatives of the Paul Castellano?
Nephews and cousins. I mean, the Gambinos are all made men. They got the family back. That crew now runs the Gambino family, from what I read in the paper and what I hear from the couple of people I talk about in the street. So the Sicilian fraction got the family back, so it just went around in a circle.
Yeah,
so Paul's crew, Paul Castellano's crew, actually is in charge again. So it just went around in a circle, like everything else. That's what life does. It goes around in a circle.
In Czech Republic, we have a famous game. It's called Mafia. And it's been over 20 years since it was released, and it's still a legendary video game. People are playing it, and everybody loves it. I contacted the godfather of the game, and he sent me a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Dan Vavra is asking if you guys used to train, box, practice the shooting skills, and if you did all of that, or it was just random surprise moment, beating the guy up when he was off the guard, shooting him from close distance. What it was all about? Did you train?
So a lot of wise guys were hunters, especially during deer season, duck season. So people were skilled in firearms, but did we go to like the shooting range? And no, but people knew their way around guns. They knew their way around guns because they were hunters. They were, legit. They went hunting during the Venice, deer season, duck season. Like a lot of my father's friends and guys I knew, wise guys I knew, went hunting, and they used to bring us the venison meat. So people were familiar with guns, but when someone got killed, it was always at close range. I mean, the only guy I really know that got shot long range was Bugsy Siegel when they shot him through the window 100 years ago. But nobody I know ever went to the shooting range like today. No, it was never. It was always.
What were the favorite guns besides the revolvers? Did you use guns?
38s. Yeah. I mean, everybody I ever saw got killed with a pistol.
Next question that he asked me was about involvement of the mafia in the JFK hit. It was during your dad's time, so I'm sure you guys talk about it. Like, Dad, what you think about it, because you were already made man for 10 years. So being a made man 10 years in 50s and 60s, you kind of had to hear any rumors that were going around. So
what I was told, his father was a gangster, Joe Kennedy. He was a bootlegger with Frank Costello and all of them. His son was running for president. He went to the Teamsters and he went to all these unions and got all these unions to back his son. His son becomes president. He makes his brother the attorney general, Robert, and they turn around and go after everybody who was Hoffa. They go after everybody that helped them. They double-crossed everybody. So that was one of the reasons why I was always told that the mob was in on that hit, because he double-crossed everybody. Mm-hmm. Do I think the CIA was in on it? I mean, it had to be. I mean, how do you kill a president that easy? Yeah. I mean, do I think Oswald was by himself? Of course not. My father and Tony Lee always told me that the mob was in on it. The guy from New Orleans was in on it. They always told me stuff like that.
JFK got hit. What was the situation in the United States? How did people live? Was it for them easy to be Americans? Was the economy getting better?
Well, I was a kid when that happened. I don't really remember. I mean, I know we were living good. I mean, people in my neighborhood, we were fine. Mm-hmm. Everybody worked. Everybody had money. Nobody was starving. There was no home. The only time you saw homeless people was when you came to Manhattan. We used to call them hobos. They would clean your windshield, and with the rich straight and clean your window. We weren't around none of that like it is today.
How it was when it comes to safety? Could your mom just walk
Oh
on the
yeah,
street?
nobody bothered us. Nobody. My mother, we kept our doors open. We were in and out of each other's houses.
It's
It's
crazy.
a different world.
What is your take on United States right now then, when you are looking at it? I mean, the flag is still the same, but the country is not the same at all. It's not even
No,
united.
it's totally different. I don't know. We're in a lot of trouble. We're in a lot of trouble.
It's crazy because when you look at it, nobody is united. States are suing each other. States are suing federal government. Federal
Yeah.
government goes against the government.
Everybody, yeah, it's crazy. They're weaponizing everything. The DOJ, it's all weaponized. I don't know. It's a crazy world.
And you guys like lived in New York when Trump was in his prime when it comes to construction, and Sammy talked about it many
Yeah, no,
times.
Sammy never got him. Trump just put Sammy on his Instagram the other day. Sammy's going crazy. He's getting calls from all over the world to go on their shows and everything. He's told me, Sammy personally told me that he couldn't get to Trump. Trump was too smart, too insulated, and had nothing to do with the mob. The mob could not touch him. And the mob ran the construction industry, but not Trump.
When I look on the old pictures and videos, all the cars on the streets are Americans.
Yeah.
And there's not millions of
No.
them. There's five different brands
Yeah.
or major brands, and then the rest is just people.
When I was a kid, nobody bought foreign cars. When I was a kid, my father always bought Cadillacs or Buicks. He always had a Cadillac or a Buick. Nobody I know had a foreign car when I was a kid, except like maybe a Ferrari or,
Yeah, of course.
something, Mercedes, something exotic, but never like just a regular family car.
But when it comes to also the car theft, that makes your job way easier because there's
Oh,
only
yeah.
5 brands and everything is the same, right?
The way I made money back then, I could never make money. I don't know what I would do today to make. If someone told me today I had to be a criminal again, I wouldn't even know where to start. If someone told me today, listen, the only way you can make money now is if you become a criminal again, I won't even know what to do because everything I did, you can't do no more.
Yeah. But also, you were introduced to that word by others. So maybe if you would have some other people nowadays telling you what to do, maybe you would find out anyway.
I had an FBI handler. And so, and I don't really want to get political, but I'll just end with this. So, democratic cities, the crime rate is crazy. Like shoplifting's legal now.
Yes.
It's legitimately, shoplifting's legal now. So I'm watching TV and I'm seeing all these guys running in Louis Vuitton stores, taking bags out, and nobody's getting arrested and everything. So this agent calls me up to check on me to see how I'm doing. I'm not involved with the FBI no more. Like, they have no bearing on my life, but they do once in a while call me up. How you doing? What's going on? So I get a call one day from this FBI agent that I know, and he, hey, what's going on? This and that, and we're talking. And to break his balls, I tell him, listen, I came up with a new thing. I think I'm really seriously giving this new scheme. I got some thought. He goes, yeah, what's that? I said, I think I'm going to move to a democratic city. I said, and I'm going to become a shoplifter again. And I'm going to just get Louis Vuitton bags, Gucci bags, Chanel bags. I'm just going to get them and then come back to Florida and sell them. He says, you're kidding, right? Like, he thought I was serious. He goes, you're kidding, right? I go, yeah, no, I'm only kidding. For a second, like I had him. He thought I was serious.
It's up to.
I says, why not? Nobody's getting arrested no more.
Exactly. It's up to $950 just misdemeanor.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
It's insane.
Try to say it back then, guys. Everything up to $1,000 is just misdemeanor.
It's
Dave
crazy.
would just went out and robbed.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Wow. Okay, last question.
Yes.
What do you miss from the life?
I miss the action. I miss the action. Like, I miss the scheming. I miss the crew. I miss the guys. I miss like waking up in the morning and going out and meeting the guys and going to the racetrack and talking shit. I miss that. I miss the money. I miss a lot of stuff about it. I don't, but when I think about it, it's like, when I think about my life, I was never content. This is the best way I could explain it. When I was in that life, I was never content. I was never safe. I was never content. And it was always about the next scheme, more money. If I'm with a redhead, I want to go with a blonde. If I have a Cadillac, I want a Mercedes. I was never satisfied. I was never humble. I was never satisfied. Yeah, I sat in the front row. Now I don't. I sit maybe in the front row of the loge. You know what I mean? But I'm content now. I'm content today. Mm-hmm. But do I miss miss certain things about it, but I paid the price for those things. There's a price to pay for that. There's a price to pay for the money. There's a price to pay for sitting in the front row. Now today I'm content. I wake up, I sit on my couch, my cat jumps up next to me, I drink my coffee, I don't have to worry about getting locked up, I'm not hurting nobody, my bills are paid, my kids are healthy, and it's a different life, but I miss it. I miss certain things. How could you not?
Well, just because you just mentioned, hanging out with guys and stuff, like we totally skipped the part that you hang out with Keith Richards and you snort coke with them and Andy Warhol and stuff.
There was this club in Manhattan called the Ritz. It opened up when I was in jail in 79 and 80. My father was in the music business. He was friends with this guy, Jay Black, Jay and the Americans. They made a lot of hit records, and Frankie Valli from the Four Seasons. So they opened up not them, but a guy named Stanley London and this guy, Jerry Brenner, who were with this guy, Matty the Horse. He was a captain with the Genovese family. They opened up a rock club in Manhattan, downtown Manhattan, called the Ritz. It was a theater. They made it a rock club. Now it's called Webster Hall. It's still in Manhattan. So when I got out of jail in 80, my brother was hanging out in there. And I started hanging out in there with my brother and and now it was Studio 54 was uptown and the Ritz was downtown. And the celebrities were going back and forth to each club. And on Thursday nights, all the celebrities would come to the Ritz. Like it was just one of those things. And we had the run of the place, like, because the owner, we were Fat Andy's kids. Like it was our joint. Like even though he was with Matty the Horse, like it was our club. And upstairs was the VIP section and all the tables were roped off and we had our own table. So, all the celebrities that came in there, we got introduced to. And for some reason, celebrities like to hang out with mob guys. It's like crazy, Like, listen, I'm a nobody. I was just in L.A. Like, I did Get Gotti, right? I was in L.A. They took me to a private club in Beverly Hills. When I walked in, I was the celebrity. Like, all the celebrities and the producers, oh, my God, we saw Get Gotti. You were great. It's just, they just, because it's a unique lifestyle.
Yes.
So when I was hanging out in the Ritz, they would sit with us. Stanley would bring them over, or Stanley would come over and ask us if we had any blow. We weren't dealing coke, but we always had coke dealers with us.
Of course.
We always traveled with a coke dealer. And so he would come over and say, you got any blow? I got Andy Warhol in my office. He wants to, you got any blow? Come on, let's go do a few lines. And we would get up and I'd go in the office and he'd introduce me to Andy Warhol, or come in my office, or one night he tells me, one night I'm there with my uncle, and he tells me, listen, I got to take a ride later. I want to introduce you to somebody. I want you to come with me. One of the own, Jerry. And I go, who you got to meet? He goes, it's a surprise. He goes, but he says, you got blow on you, right? I go, of course I got blow. I got a package on me, right? We get in his car, we walk into a club in the Greenwich Village. We walk in, he had to meet David Bowie.
Nice.
Now I'm sitting down with David Bowie, drinking with David Bowie. It was just a wild life, wild life. Well, my father used to tell me, don't ever have any pity for the public. He goes, the public deserves every fucking they get for voting for these people. And the worse the economy did, the better the mob did. Like when Jimmy Carter was the president, my father got rich. Because the economy sucked, gold went to $1,000 an ounce. That's actually when my father got rid of the Lufthansa jewelry, because of that. Jimmy Carter was horrible. He was just like Joe Biden. There was something mentally wrong with them. Whenever the economy does bad, the mob thrives, because people are going to come to us for money. People are going to start gambling more, thinking if I play a number, I'm going to win. People are going to buy stolen merchandise, cigarettes. Listen, cigarettes are $18 a pack in New York. Now, if I'm selling untaxed cigarettes, who are they going to buy cigarettes off of? Me, or they're going to go pay $18 a pack? So the worse the economy does, the higher the taxes go, the more money the mob makes. In the 90s, I had a guy, an Asian guy in Long Island, had a store. We had credit cards. We used to go buy 100 cartons of cigarettes a day. And we used to sell him the cartons of cigarettes just because they had stamps on them. We used to sell him $10 a carton.
Nice. Good.
But that's when cigarettes weren't $15 a pack. Of course. But, so the mob's always going to make money. How they make money today, I don't know. But there's always going to make money, because the public's always going to, need something. It's supply and demand.
Yeah. And now we know the economy is again bad, so some bad guys are making a lot of money, I guess.
Definitely.
Well, Anthony, thank you very much. It was great. Very, very fulfilling. I learned a lot. And
Okay.
I got a little present for you.
Oh.
This is brain teaser we are making.
Oh wow.
You got out of the jail in the year when I got it. I got it 17 years ago.
Okay.
And there's only 2 of them that exist. One of them I have, and one of them has my buddy who gave it to me.
Wow.
And we start making them, and there's one for you. There's an English story written on there. It's written on the paper with little letters, so maybe you can have someone to read it for you.
Okay.
And then if you are gonna be offline in the plane, you can try and play it out and try to put it together.
Okay.
The goal is to put together a dinosaur.
A dinosaur?
And,
Okay.
and on the flat surface. So you put it on and you put it together, and this one is for you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for
Thank you. Oh, my
thank you for the
pleasure.
interview. It was great,
nice.
and I wish you the luck on your way.
Thank you.
You have a lot of to say, a lot of life experience, and I will put all the information in the description. People can find you on
Yes.
Patreon, YouTube,
Yeah, right.
subscribe.
Yes.
Guys, listen. You can learn English that way. You can listen some interesting stories, learn some new words. Now you know what clipping is. Now you know what soccer is, and what the Gambino family is kind of about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys with the next episode. Take care.